Welcome to the Wired for Success podcast, your show for ambitious, mission-driven entrepreneurs who want to build million-dollar businesses without sacrificing their health, relationships, or happiness, who understand that in order to build their empire, they need a solid foundation, and that the more they are thriving, the more their business is thriving too. This show brings you the very best from science, self-development, and entrepreneurship to set you up for sustainable success. Hi, I'm Claudia Garbutt, the scientist turned mindset and high performance coach for entrepreneurs, and I help you get wired for success. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Wired for Success podcast, where we talk about all things science, self-development, and entrepreneurship that help you get to that next level of success in your life and business. And today I have an intriguing question for all the listeners out there. What if leveling up your life was as fun as playing your favorite game? Well, my guest today is Will Moore, a dynamic serial entrepreneur and expert in behavioral science, habits, and happiness, who has dedicated his life to answering this exact question. And after hitting rock bottom in college, he began his quest to unearth the true meaning of happiness. After years of evolution and growth, he discovered that real happiness isn't derived from money, power, or fame. Instead, it comes from understanding one's unique sources of joy and consistently incorporating them into your daily life. And just to add some color and context for the listeners, Will sold his last business for 9 figures. So he knows what he's talking about and he has experienced what it's like to have all the success in a traditional sense. So anyway, his More Momentum system fuses cutting-edge technology, behavioral science, and gamification with timeless principles to allow fellow entrepreneurs to replace their failure habits with healthy habits. And essentially, this helps them turn their life into this incredibly rewarding and ethically addicting game that ensures continual growth and balances the 5 core areas of happiness. Will is also part of this amazing entrepreneur accelerator group that I got to run for the last few months. So I've had the pleasure of watching him build his new venture. And believe me, it's super cool. And I can't wait for Will to tell you all about it. So welcome, Will. And thank you so much for being on my show today.
Oh, wow. Now that's an intro. Let's give it up, kids. I'm impressed with that. I don't know who that guy is, but I'm impressed with him. No, thank you very much, Claudia. That was awesome. We know each other. Claudia's, anybody listening, I'm sure you're doing it for a reason. Amazing individual who I have gained a lot of insights from, and am she's helping continue for me to build momentum, to spread momentum to the rest of the world. So thank you for having me, Claudia. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. So, Will, let's start with a question that probably a lot of listeners might have at this point. So, what is the most important lesson that building a 9-figure business has taught you about entrepreneurship in general?
So it's funny, right? Immediately what comes to my mind, and it's not even, I don't think, a close second, is fail forward. I think failure is one of these things that once you get to the mindset, I call it a growth owner versus a fixed victim. But the gist is, once you get to the mindset that failure is mandatory, it's not even like something that you have to put up with. It's mandatory. So it's looking at it as it's going to happen and learn the lessons as they come. You don't have to jump up and down for joy every time a failure happens, or you get, it's going to hurt, it's going to sting. That's okay. You're human. No shame in that game, and taking a moment and licking your wounds. But the key is to get back up on your horse and say, okay, that sucked. What did I learn? How can I move forward?
That is so important. It's one of the most important mindset shifts for everyone out there who's starting a new business. I think that's one of the things that held me back for such a long time, because I was so terrified of just, doing something that wasn't perfect, just failing, but just embracing failure as one of those stepping stones towards success. I think that's super, super important. Now, when we stay with the past business that you've built. Can you tell us a little bit more about the business model that you used? What did it look like? What worked well? What were its main challenges? And how did you overcome them?
Oh, yeah. So there was, I think every entrepreneur's journey, it's rare that you're going to get hey, this was a cookie cutter system. And, it was just like you would think. There's always a million little zigs and zags, kind of tying to what we were just talking about in terms of failing forward, because you're going to think you know the answer and the way you want to go and the business plan you want to have. And then you're going to get whacked in the face and it's going to pivot. So the gist was, in the very beginning, I used to work for a real estate selling land company, and we would be stuck in the office for 12 to 15 hours at a time sometimes, and we didn't have the option to eat good food. Our secretary would order us pizza, and at the time, it's hard for people to remember this, but back around that time, we've only had delivery services like your Grubhubs, your Uber Eats, DoorDash. Let's see, Delivery Hero, I think where you are might be a big one. For really popular for about 10 years now. So before that, it was like you either went and got it yourself, brought your own lunch, or had pizza or Chinese. So there's got to be something. So I came up with this business plan. Real estate was starting to wind down. This was right around 2006. I don't know if anybody remembers that time, but things got a little spooky in the real estate market and the stock market. That's when we had the big crash and the correction and all these things. And I started to sense it in my company. I said, what would be my next thing? And I just really kind of grabbed onto this idea of, being able to order food wherever you want. At the time, the real estate market had just exploded in Orlando, where I was living, Florida, and all these buildings and offices. And I'm watching all these towers and huge apartments and condos going up. I'm like, all these people got to eat. And nobody wants to get in their elevator and go out and get in their car and drive somewhere. So came up with the business plan, and the gist of after that was essentially just lots of failures. Thought I knew how to get the commission from the restaurant that was going to be successful. Nope. Thought I knew how to talk to the restaurant owners to partner with them in order to say, hey, this is a great opportunity. You and I partner together. People order from me. It's an incremental sale you never would have had. We pick up your food. We deliver it. Lots of slaps in the face and said, you're going to take my food out of my restaurant? Get the hell out of here. I actually got cursed out by food. Like, are you kidding? So, you got to remember, this is a concept that's completely foreign. Now it's like every restaurant does it because they realize it's an incremental sale and they might as well have it because you've already got your cook, you've already got your overhead, right? You've got your utilities that you're paying, you've got your rent, you're paying your staff. Why not bring in extra orders? So that was kind of the mindset, and that was what the business plan was built around. But it didn't translate at first until it did.
That sounds super interesting. So once you got it to work, what were the main challenges after it already started to work? So what were the challenges of scaling the business?
So yeah, software was a big one. We had licensed the software. There really wasn't anything else out there at the time. Our biggest competition was this company called Telephone Taxi. If that gives you any sort of reference, they were all telephone based. And so here we are. We actually opened the year the iPhone came out, and so we were trying to use this technology. And I spotted this opportunity where I'm like, wait a minute. Instead of having to call our drivers, give them directions over the phone, or hope that they're good with maps. Like remember those old maps we used to put in our dashboards? Nobody could afford those. They used to have these Garmin GPS things, but nobody could afford those at the time. They were like $250, and these are delivery drivers, pizza delivery drivers and stuff. And so once that came out, the software was pretty neat in what it could do, but it had a lot of limitations. So we could get the order to come in. People would order online. They would order through their phone. It would come into our system. Our dispatcher would then go, okay, the closest driver is this guy, and I'm going to send it to him. And then he would get it popped up on his phone. He would have directions to the restaurant as well as the customer. But it was extremely glitchy, constantly freezing, customers calling and complaining. So I would say that was the biggest challenge. And we ultimately ended up building our own software to solve that.
Right. So it sounds like technology played a huge part in the success of the last business.
Absolutely.
And now I understand why AI is so exciting to you right now, and all the things that it enables you to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, if we
Before,
had AI back then, life would have been really awesome because we started with just one driver at a time, right? And so it wasn't very complicated. It's like there's only one driver and there's an order. It's going to him. But then you
mm,
start to get up into thousands of orders, thousands of drivers, dispatchers trying to figure out who's the best driver at the time. Drivers have multiple orders, right? So you got one driver, he's got 3 orders coming in, but you can't just give him any 3 orders. You need to make sure that that order is being picked up in the proper sequence so that the food isn't sitting there and getting cold, and that that customer is getting their food delivered within under 30 minutes to 45 minutes versus, if you were to send somebody, hey, we'll send you to this restaurant, deliver it to them, but then, oh, we're also going to send you across town to pick up another order, then the whole thing
mm.
falls apart. AI, very helpful back
Oh my goodness, that would have been so helpful.
then.
What was it like to finally sell your business baby for that huge amount of money? What did it feel like, and was it as good as most people would anticipate?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'm glad you asked that because I really want people to listen up to this one. Gather around, people. Come in close on this one. It's not a simple yes or no, black and white answer. It's more, did it feel great when we sold? You bet your bottom dollar it did. There was like this explosion of a weight just got lifted off my shoulder. It was 10 years from start to finish, essentially, that I started the business, grew it, from one driver and one area to, over 30 areas and thousands of drivers and thousands of restaurants. And, then I got a partner and we expanded and we had franchises. So the whole thing was quite a journey. Towards the end, though, it stopped being fun. We started getting a lot of competition. And so bottom line is, yeah, when we sold, it was just like, oh, this feels great. However, I want to be very clear about this. It's the old adage, just like when you watch a band documentary and be careful what you wish for, right? If you don't have the values, if you don't have the habits, if you don't have the right mindset going into something like that, you're screwed. Just like that show, The Lottery ruined my life, right? So I feel fortunate that I had already been developing my self-help wellness journey for years and years, as you mentioned earlier, starting in college when I had a rock bottom kind of suicidal moment. So I'd already started developing my physical health, my relationships, my mindset, my emotional health, and so the career and finance aspect was a big part of it, and I was excited, but I stopped being excited about it. So I was actually looking forward to pivoting to something else, and that euphoria of, wow, this is amazing. It only lasted for about 2 to 4 weeks, I'd say, right? I was like,
Mm.
oh, I don't have to work. I can go get a massage. I can go play golf. But then you very quickly get to the point where it's, okay, now what? What's next? And so
Yeah.
to me, that's when it hit me. The key to life, the secret to happiness is growth. It's momentum. It's continually growing into the areas that excite you, that you're passionate about, that utilize your strengths, and that you can keep taking steps every day towards completing goals.
Yeah, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially, totally resonate with what you just shared because there's actually underlying neurophysiology that explains this feeling of, yeah, it's great, but oh, the feeling is gone so fast because it's the dopamine crash afterwards, right? Because dopamine, the feel good neurotransmitter, is released in anticipation, mostly in anticipation of a reward. So once you got the reward, you actually fall into this, into it's like falling into a hole basically
Yeah.
because your dopamine crashes and yeah, it just doesn't feel good. And then you, especially as an entrepreneur, you already start to think about the next venture, like what's the next big thing, what am I going to chase next? And
That's exactly right, and I mean it happens very quickly, right? This
yeah,
whole old adage that this image that people have grown up with, like if I could only, I wish if only I could have $1 million, $100 million, and by the way, no matter how much you get, then it always, that number always changes. Like if I could only get a million, then you get a million. You're like, well, no, 10 million.
yeah,
Well, no, I need a private jet, 100 million. But what happens is there is no sitting on the beach drinking pina coladas for the rest of your life. Like that actually doesn't exist, unfortunately. Yes, you can take a break and you can have a nice vacation and just relax, and that's part of your emotional health. But the key to as success in life that I've found is to continually be growing. As soon as you stop growing, both physically and mentally, then you're dying.
Yeah, that's true. But sometimes it's really good just to pause and celebrate your success, because that's something that a lot of people just, don't do, because they already think about what's the next big thing. So how did you celebrate?
That's a great point, right? So I want to make it clear that, yeah, you don't want to just be tunnel vision, go, 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 go. You do want to try to enjoy the ride. And so I definitely, because like I said, I was fortunate to have been reading a lot of these self-help books, and I was kind of using myself as a human science experiment for years and years since college when I had that moment. And I'd actually been writing a book, which was going to be called Universal Principles. Ray Dalio, he stole my ideal. But it was basically like, these are all I've read these in a lot of different ways in different books, these concepts, and I've tried them out in my own life. And like, I am 100,000% sure that if you were to revolve your life around these things and your habits and start actually utilizing these things in your life, you will be happy. And to ignore them, you're going to be in trouble. And so that's kind of the path that I took with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we've all been lied to, and real happiness really does not come from money, power, or fame, no matter how much the consumer industry or Hollywood try to convince us of the opposite. Now, how are you using your experience to help others replace their failure habits with success habits? Can you tell us more about those 5 core areas and how your framework works?
Sure. So the 5 cores are so you've got your mindset, you've got your career and finances, you've got your relationships, you've got your physical health, and you've got your emotional health. They're actually all represented here. So I like to think of, you just heard me talking about momentum and continually building. I like to use a rocket ship as the as an analogy to your life. And you've got these 5 cores. And in order to break Earth's gravitational pull, you need to slowly but surely start understanding what these cores mean to you, what's important, what are those universal principles within each that you gravitate towards, that you can start expressing your habits through. And so the first key phase is becoming aware of what these failure habits are that you maybe have built through your parents, I call them your major influences, your parents, school, media, peers, these types of things that, all of a sudden now it's like, okay, this is just who I am. These are the habits that I have. And habits don't care if they're good or bad, helping or hurting. Either way, they are going to compound and they're going to form who you are. So it's very important to become aware of the ones that are hurting you, slowing your momentum, so to speak, causing friction, and the ones that you can build to start replace those with to gain momentum. And that's a key point when I say replace. I think a lot of us make the mistake of trying to use willpower to stop bad habits, but that's a lot harder. And behavioral science, Claudia, I know you know this, it's a lot easier if you already have the momentum of taking certain actions, that you use those actions, but then you just change the cue or you change the trigger to use that same failure habit to then pivot over to replace it with a success habit. So like, for example, if you're hungry at night and your failure habit is at midnight every night, you go and you grab the Cheetos. Okay, well, your brain's still gonna be on autopilot. It's gonna walk down those stairs and it's gonna go into the cupboard. But how do you kind of trick your brain into having a success habit instead? Well, you replace those Cheetos with something that's maybe not quite as good at first, but for me, it ended up being mixed nuts. This is a true story. I used to love Cheetos. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, yeah, it's all that's there. I've thrown away the Cheetos. They're eye level. I don't really have a choice. But then what's interesting is what happens is you start to build momentum with that habit. It starts to lock in, and you start, the guilt goes away of eating the Cheetos. The good feeling of eating healthy food kicks in. And then that success habit and those mixed nuts actually start to taste better than those Cheetos. And I'm not saying you don't crave Cheetos once in a while, but it doesn't become an everyday habit that you have. And so that's kind of the gist. Within each of these cores, you want to figure out what are these failure habits that you've developed, and then what are the success habits to replace them with, and how can you use behavioral science and gamification to sort of trick your brain into wanting to take the actions that are good for you.
That's so good. And I mean, as you said, it's so much easier to replace a habit than to just stop doing it. Because if you just interrupt the habit loop, then you kind of, it feels awful. It feels like, "Ugh," something is missing. So if you can replace it, you can still go through the entire habit loop, get a reward, but you have just replaced the routine, the negative routine that does not support your long-term goals. So
Right.
one of that's super interesting for a lot of people probably who are trying to change their habits. So let's talk a little bit more about the thing that you're currently building. How can people plug into your system and start using your framework?
Well, funny you should ask, Claudia. We are actually very close to launching beta. I currently I coach some individuals privately, but to be honest, I'm kind of moving away from that. Main reason being, as I mentioned earlier, I I'm somebody that wants to keep moving and keep growing and have goals. And so my first goal was, okay, let me get some clients and start testing this stuff out. I've seen that it works now. And so my next step is actually using AI, as we talked earlier, and some other behavioral science and modern technology to make it fun and rewarding and ethically addicting to get those dopamine hits that are actually going to pay off for you. So we're launching in a couple weeks of beta. It's going to be called Habits AI, and it will allow you to do the first step we talked briefly about, which is to become aware. And the idea is to figure out what are those failure habits you've developed, those top ones in each quarter. You got to start slow. If you start too big and you start to replace all your habits at once, this is another scientific phenomenon that I know you're aware of. We immediately shut down and we go, whoa, that was way too hard. I knew I couldn't do it. I'm just going to go back to my old failure routine. So you want to start slow. You start with one habit at a time. I have a little quiz on my website that you can take to sort of see where you are weakest, which core you want to start with. And then you just start to get to work. And the Habits AI we have will help you identify what we call your golden habit. And your golden habit, the gist of that is, what is the perfect habit for you? So like Claudia, I know we've talked a little bit about this type of stuff, and you've told me when it comes, so I like to use the example of exercise. So let's say you're in your physical health core, you realize, okay, I need to start working out more. I'm not losing the pounds as easily as I used to. I'm starting to get a little bit older and blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden I don't work out 5 times a week. It's just 3 times a week. So you want to say, okay, I want to get that going again. So instead of just saying, again, going to willpower, which doesn't work, and saying, okay, I'm just going to go to the gym, or I'm just going to go for, go for a bike ride because this Instagrammer or this influencer of the month says I should do it. No, the key is you need to make sure that whatever the habit you're trying to build is directly connected to your unique DNA, your personality, your strengths, your passions, your goals, your lifestyle, so that it frictionlessly enters into the picture and you have the absolute best chance of forming that habit. So in your case, I know you like to run. I believe yours is your golden habit for exercise is running, and you have a few little gamification items in there. And when I say gamification items, I refer to ways to additionally reduce friction even after you've developed that golden habit. So for Claudia, she likes to run, and then she listens to her podcasts. Is that correct? Of people,
Yep.
of people that you like to, that you need to listen to, but you never have time to. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Right. And so by doing that, you're looking forward to it. Right. So you're looking forward to this habit because you love to run. You're good at it. Now, I get to listen to this podcast that's been, eating away at me that I haven't been able to listen. So now you're essentially creating a system of tricking your brain into wanting to take this action that's good for you. And by the way, we just used a few examples. There's many different examples, and every different person has, their different characteristics. So there'll be different things that work for different people. But you want to keep adding these little gamification items until you get there. So for instance, for me, with mine would be basketball. That became my goal. And I came to the same realization. I hit middle age. I'm like, wait a minute, the 6-pack isn't there like it used to be. So I'm like, I need to start working out more. ended up determining, okay, it's basketball, it's a league, it's 2 nights a week, it's 8:30 at night on Tuesdays and Thursdays because my kids are already asleep. That's a convenient time. It works for my whole family, yada yada. Like all these things that fit into my lifestyle, my passions. I can play basketball for 2 hours straight, drenched in sweat, not even feel like I got to work out because I love it so much. And I've got that relationship core mixed in there because I'm also hanging out with people and seeing my guy friends, which is something that I'm always proactively trying to spend more time anyways doing. Because when you have a family and 3 boys, Claudia, I know how you know how it is.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's very difficult to fit everything in. And so this kind of hit 2 birds with 1 stone. So I figured that out. So, but then I got to a point where one night I didn't go, and I'm like, what? Like this is the perfect habit. So I found my golden habit, but I still wasn't going. So then I just kept adding gamification items. So the first one was I put my clothes on while I was putting my kids in bath. I give them their bath every night, and I do the bedtime routine. And I put my gym clothes on. Excuse me, not just my clothes. My gym clothes, my basketball clothes, so that I would be ready to go and have them on when it was time to go, and that to reduce that friction. And so, unfortunately, there was a half an hour delay between when I put my kids to bed and when it was time to leave for basketball. So the gym clothes thing worked once or twice. Where I was like, all right, I'm already in them. I might as well go. But then I ran into another wall where I'm like, I sat down, I turned the TV on. I'm like, oh, I've got a half an hour. And I just plunked into the couch and I couldn't move. And I was like, okay, I need another gamification technique, another motivator, another way to trick my brain. So long story short, I actually tried a few more, but the one that ended up sticking was me coming to sit at this computer that we're at now and finishing the tasks that I had for the day. Because that's just the way my brain works. I like to know that I go to bed and my mind's not racing because I've done the things I've committed to. And it also activates another cool principle, which is called Parkinson's law, which is when you give yourself less time to do something, you're actually more productive. So that little half an hour span, I feel like I can get like an hour to an hour and a half worth of work and just crunching it in. And my brain is stimulated. So by the time my alarm goes off, another one, make it obvious, right? You got to have the cues to go to play basketball. I'm like rock and roll, ready to go. And it was very easy. And so that was the point where I said, okay, I have now officially, this is it. And I've never looked back, right? But it took me a little tweaking of the system. And I want people to understand that it may not, the first golden habit you think is your golden habit may not be your golden habit. You might need to keep tweaking to find the perfect one for you that fits in, again, your lifestyle, your goals, your personality, your strengths, right? And then that's not it. Once you find that, you still need to follow through on that. And so you want to find additional ways to reduce the friction, to make it obvious, to make it rewarding, to make it attractive, to make it easy, these types of things.
I love that so much. And I like that you really pointed out that things can change over time, because that's something that I always find that holds people back, because they get hung up on an idea, or they think it's kind of like set in stone. If they don't do this, then they just don't do anything. And I want them to understand that this is a work in progress. You can always find something that works for you in the circumstances that you are in right now. Just for instance, I picked up a new habit, by the way, and it was something that was not planned at all. Like I've always hated swimming, because I've been a runner. I hated swimming. I was not good at it. So now my husband is a swimmer, and the kids are started to have swim lessons years ago, and now I have to drive them to swimming lessons twice a week. And then
For your lifestyle, right? Yeah.
yes, so it changed. And then I have this 1 hour where I can either just wait around because it's a like 20 minutes drive to the swimming pool. So I don't want to go back and forth, because it's just, there's no point. So I have 1 hour to kill, and now I started to just go swimming. And it wasn't fun in the beginning, because it was just like, I don't like doing this. And then I started to experiment with all the gamification elements. Like I invited my mom to tag along. So now we had to this 1 hour to spend some quality time together. And then we decided, oh, why not just take some food and have a picnic in the in this nice area afterwards. And so we did that, and all of a sudden it got to a point where it was like, oh, this is nice, now I want to do this. And so now I'm going swimming twice a week.
Oh God, I mean, I need to use that as a example of, you perfectly nailed it, right? You took something that at first you didn't really love, and so it made no sense to be a golden habit for you for exercise. But then your lifestyle changed, and all of a sudden you find yourself where you have an hour to kill, and you probably were feeling a little guilty, like, I'm just sitting around, like, I wish I liked swimming more. And instead of just letting that be it, I wish I liked swimming more, and sitting there and scrolling on your phone, looking at social media or something like a lot of people might do, you figured out a way to make it rewarding and fun. You did the picnic, you brought your mom, you did the picnic. I'm sure you added other little elements, and then you started looking forward to it, right?
Yes, exactly. So can you maybe share a few of the gamification elements and behavioral science insights that you use inside of your app, and how those elements help people up-level their lives and habits?
Yeah, so I've mentioned a few of them. So it's interesting. When I first started with all this stuff, it was a little murky, and I think a lot of people probably are a little confused. So I'm going to try to clarify the way I see it. I still don't think, if you were to go on the internet, there's still not one clear definition, but gamification and behavioral science are the same thing, but they're different. And what I mean by that is, behavioral science, I would say, is the ultimate umbrella for everything, in terms of, understanding how the brain works, what motivates us, what's going to make us take action, stop taking others. And then you get in, and so stuff like I mentioned, making it obvious, making it easy, making it fun, rewarding, satisfying, attractive. And then I add one more. So a lot of these like the basic concept comes from books like BJ Fogg, and his book Tiny Habits, James Clear, Atomic Habits, Charles Duhigg. These types of concepts have been around for a while, but the way I wanted to put them in so that it was really simple, and you could sort of very easily go, okay, make it obvious. How do I make it obvious? And then I have methods for you, so you don't have to just think about, how can I make this obvious? Like habit stacking is one of the easiest little tricks of your brain that you can use. Habit stacking is basically saying, when I do this, then I will also do this, basically. So you say, okay, so an example of a habit stack that I turned from a neutral habit that wasn't really doing anything for me, actually sometimes a negative habit, which is when I would shower. I would just sit there, and sometimes I even start having negative thoughts, like, oh, I got to do this today, I got to do that. Like, and then you come out of the shower and you're already like drained before the day's even started. So what I did is I turned that into a habit stack. And so what I do now, and it's on autopilot. Like if I walk into any shower anywhere, it doesn't matter if it's mine or anything, in the morning, I immediately start to say my mantra in my mind, because I've memorized my mantra. So this was the first element that I added. Then a few years later, I ended up breaking my playing basketball. I tore my ACL and my meniscus. And so from now until the end of my life, I need to be doing stretches every day if I want to maintain my health and strength there. And so I added that in too, and because I found that when I'm in the shower and I'm saying my mantra to myself, I was kind of bored. I'm just sort of sitting there. Now I'm actually doing all my stretches. I'm leaning against the wall. I'm stretching my back foot and all these things. And I've gotten to the point where it took a little time, but I've timed it perfectly to where my stretches and my mantra line up perfectly. So I finished it, and then right at the end, I then added a third habit stack, which is grateful. And I essentially remind myself what I'm grateful for, because it's really hard to have a bad day and to be in a bad mood when you tell yourself all the great things you have. And we all have things going for us. Unfortunately, the default for most of us is to start thinking about the bad things that we have going on in our lives. And so by the time I get out of my shower, I'm like, let's go. It's like super pumped up, excited. I got another little habit stack. I've got my Alexa playing. She's waiting for me. outside the shower. I can kind of hear her when I'm showering, but then I get in and it's my own customized mix of all these motivational songs that get me pumped that I love personally. And so I'm just like ready to start my day by the time I finish my routine.
Yeah, love this. And I'm sure your system will help so many people just by making change fun. Because that's the thing that keeps most people from moving forward. They avoid change like the plague because it's usually not fun. It's hard work that requires a lot of willpower, at least if they do it the traditional way. So any system that can make that process easier and more fun is bound to be incredibly helpful for so many people. And I can't wait to hear and see how this is going to change people's lives. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. Yes, it's extremely exciting and fun. And speaking of fun, right? I'll just briefly touch on. So I kind of talked about the behavioral science. Then the gamification element. I'm actually developing an app as well that is going to really start bringing in game-like elements. Which at the end of the day, we're all big kids. We all just want to have fun and play. And so the big companies out there, you're starting to see this. Gamification is becoming a bigger and bigger buzzword these days. Where but they're using it to monetize our attention. To make money, but you can also use that for good, right? So you things like rewards and points and competition and social connectivity. These are all things that motivate us and make us want to take actions. And so my app will take both taking that golden habit we talked about and starting to put little gamification elements. I call that stage 1. Stage 2 then really drives the nail home and it makes it fun to actually check in every morning on the habits that you're working on. And you're a little rocket ship and you start on Earth. And in order to break Earth's gravitational pull, you got to slowly but surely start replacing your failure habits with success habits, checking in each morning, and then at night, scoring yourself on how well you did. There's a little journal entry where you can just sort of enter any highlights for the day, lowlights, things you learned for the day, failures that you learned from. And then, the idea is you're flying to different planets and through asteroid fields, and you're meeting aliens along the way, giving you universal principles. And you're upgrading your ship with different armor and thrusters, and it's making it fun. And I'm using all these elements that, we kind of talked about, and unexpected. People want those unexpected, our rewards are always more effective when they're variable, is the word I was looking for. Right. And so I know, and I've learned enough about behavioral science to where I'm putting these things into the app to where the idea is you're becoming ethically addicted to wanting to check in every day and score yourself. And just by becoming, that makes you more, it goes back to the original thing we were talking about, more aware. Every single day you're becoming more aware of who you are, what makes you tick, what you need to do to start making these changes to build that momentum in life.
So good. Can't wait to see it. So where can our listeners find you online, or where can they check out the app?
So they can go to my website's probably the best, moremomentum.com, MOORE is my last name, momentum.com. You can take the quiz there, and that will at least kind of give you that idea, like we talked about earlier, of where you currently stand in each of your 5 cores, which one you're struggling with most and want to get started on. Habits AI will launch hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks, the beta. But stay tuned if you're on my website, and then if you get on the mailing list, then you'll be attuned to when that's coming out. And then the app, hopefully within the next 3 to 4 months, will be coming out.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your tips and insights with us today. It's always so much fun talking with you and geeking out about behavioral science and high performance habits and just helping people be their best selves.
Well, thank you so much, Claudia, for having me on. This was truly a pleasure. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care and talk soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Wired for Success podcast. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. That's a fantastic, easy, and zero-cost way to help the show grow. Just use the link in the show notes and make my day. Want more? For quick, actionable tips and insights to guided meditations and a side of biohacking, join my inner circle and get access to exclusive subscriber-only content. Again, just use the link in the show notes to join the tribe. Thank you for your support and see you on the other side. Take care and talk soon. Bye.